Ladies and gentlemen, this is a warning. Thank you.
Sitting just north of Philadelphia, Bucks County, Pennsylvania takes up 622 square miles along the state's eastern border. While it would steadily grow alongside Philadelphia, the population of Bucks County would explode in the 1960s as wealthier Caucasian families fled the inner cities during this period. By the 1970s, that growth would drop off, and since the new millennium, just under 50,000 new residents have been recorded. Today, Bucks County is known for its blend of historic charm, suburban life, and vastly estates. Many of Philadelphia's elite own second or third properties in the rural areas, enjoying their own private retreats. For most, that means a place to get away from the hecticness of life and enjoy some quiet nature. But for others, the remote locations would offer a place for more nefarious plans. The seclusion and tranquility would be shattered in the summer of 2017, when reports of 4 missing area boys all came out over the July 4th holiday week.
Now to the race to find 4 young men who disappeared in Pennsylvania.
4 young men, including 2 teens in Bucks County, went missing last week.
They disappeared not all at once, but over a span of 2 days.
Anyone with information is urged to call authorities.
The 4 young men ran in the same friend circles, but seemed to have vanished at mostly different times, sparking a fear in the community, who all wanted to know the same thing: what had happened to the boys?
Police are beginning to suspect foul play in the case of the 4 young men outside of Philadelphia.
Authorities in Bucks County say they will not rest until they find the 4 men.
This investigation, of course, is a priority for us and for every agency involved.
There has been an enormous amount of police activity all throughout Bucks County, from Bensalem to where we are at now in Solebury Township.
They are going to be working into the night here.
They could be anywhere, but there is hope. They could still be alive.
As the community and nation watched in real time as developments came out, the mystery would take a dark turn when a suspect was quickly apprehended.
This area is now the center of the search. It's huge. Investigators say it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Searching more than 80 acres on the ground and with a helicopter by air.
The FBI has now been brought in to help with this investigation.
Because one cell phone has been tracked to this location, one car is there.
We're not exactly sure what we're going to find there.
Suspense would turn to horror when it was announced the boys' bodies were found buried on a property in Solebury Township.
We have found human remains.
The remains are those of at least one of the 4 men missing for about 5 days from a Philadelphia suburb.
This is a homicide, make no mistake about it. We just don't know how many homicides.
For Bucks County, the summer calm was about to be shattered, because what began as a series of missing persons cases would soon unravel into one of the most haunting and horrifying criminal investigations the area had ever seen. This is the case of the Bucks County 4.
Goes on in San Francisco for the man known as the Zodiac Killer.
There could be a serial killer in Chicago.
The Oakland County child killer.
Phantom killer.
Frankfurt slasher.
4 children have now been murdered.
Has killed 5 and says he's going to kill again.
15 brutally murdered young women.
The pattern is the same.
One by one,
the death count started rising.
A man in a mask robbed, tied, and stabbed them.
Strangled, stuffed in burlap bags.
It is highly unlikely that these women were murdered by separate men.
Where will the killer strike next?
Police can't answer who or why.
That's the question that we'll never know.
I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering if this person's going to be caught.
I believe that there's someone out there that has knowledge.
And he's probably still at large.
If you know our own road, you know we value our privacy. In our personal life, it's not always easy to maintain. Whether we know it or not, sites will mine our data like full name, email, health records, and more, which they will sell to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who wants to snoop. That's why we started using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows us which data brokers are selling our personal information and automatically submits opt-out requests on our behalf. This not only reduces the amount of spam you'll get, but protects against hackers who can use this information to gain access to our social media, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also provides a ton of other features bundled into one easy-to-use app at an affordable price. You get antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without needing to bother with different apps. We all have one or more of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. And if you're a regular viewer, you'll know how often that happens. Like 24-hour security, motion sensors, and guard dogs, Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping my info safe so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. Relaxing. RuinRoad values our privacy, and we also value yours. Go to aura.com/ruinroad to start a free 2-week trial, also linked below in the description.
That is a packed beach in Rehoboth.
Yes. Umbrellas as far as the eye can literally
space.
see. Yeah, it's so nice outside right now, though. Whether it's steamy or not, you still got the warmth everywhere, and it's still perfect weather to head outside all in all and enjoy the water.
Summer was in full swing in Bucks County, Pennsylvania on the week of July 4th, 2017. Temperatures would reach the low 90 degrees Fahrenheit, while some scattered storms would hit the area. In nearby Washington, D.C., the Capitol 4th concert would feature the Beach Boys. New Jersey would reopen their state parks and beaches after Governor Chris Christie signed a budget agreement that had left the government shut down for the previous 3-day weekend. On Coney Island, Joey Chestnut would set a new world record in the annual hot dog eating contest. In Philadelphia, the Wow Wow Welcome American Festival was celebrating its 25th anniversary and drew in hundreds of thousands of visitors over the week-long event that concluded on Tuesday, July 4th that year. Post-holiday, many Americans resumed their normal lives again, returning to work and school, but not everyone made it back. Just 3 days after the holiday, the first missing report would come in, followed by another and another. Friends and family noticed that the boys all were familiar with each other, if not friends. 3 of the boys vanished on the same day, but during at least 2 separate times. Panic flooded the community, but as they had just vanished, most hoped their disappearances might be solved innocently. But optimism would fade as developments soon came forward. The first inkling that anything had gone wrong over the holiday came Thursday, July 6th, when Richard Patrick would phone police to report his grandson, 19-year-old Jimmy Taro Patrick, had not been seen since 6 p.m. the following day. Patrick was living with his grandparents over the summer before returning to Loyola University for his sophomore year. He had a summer job at a restaurant in Buckingham and was an avid sports player, in particular basketball. Jimmy had graduated with honors from Holy Ghost Preparatory Academy in 2016 and had made the dean's list his freshman year of college. The future was bright. 1 day later, on Friday, July 7th, the mother of 19-year-old Dean Finocchiaro would report that her son had gone missing in Langhorne. Though he had a previous minor drug charge, Dean had graduated from Neshaminy High School in 2016 and had begun working as a cook at Richmond's Ice Cream and Burger Co. in Bristol Township. He was a lover of ice hockey, dirt bikes, and in quieter moments, fishing. Friends described him as adventurous and loyal.
Family and friends, meantime, are hoping to locate 2 teenagers from Bucks County who went missing just days apart from each other. Police say Jimmy Tar Patrick from Newtown Township has not been seen or heard from since 6:00 p.m. on Wednesday, July 5th. Family members say he hasn't shown up to work, which is highly unusual. So reported missing 18-year-old Dean Finocchiaro from Langhorne. Family and friends say Dean was last seen this past Friday, July 7th, getting into a vehicle on Hampton Drive around 6:30 in the evening. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is asked to call Middletown Township Police.
Police barely had a chance to look into the boys' disappearances when the following day they received another call. The mother of Thomas Mayo stated that her son and his friend Mark Sturgis had vanished after they had left together the same night Dean had gone missing. Thomas had graduated Bensalem High School in 2014 on the varsity teams for both wrestling and track. He loved fishing, eating at diners, and spending time in Philadelphia. Nicknamed Alpaca, Mark was also an athlete who loved to play the guitar. Both boys worked for Mark's father's construction company. At first, their families had hoped the boys just went out for a wild night of drinking, when repeated calls to their cell phones went straight to voicemail. But when neither showed up for work, they would report the kids missing. Though no one was sure exactly what was going on, police and residents knew something was very wrong in Bucks County.
Bucks County are investigating the mysterious disappearances of 4 young men, including 2 teenagers.
At this point, police are not sure if these 4 cases are related.
It was the early morning of Sunday, July 9th, when Mark Sturgis's car would be discovered in the parking lot across the street from Peddler's Village in Lahaska, Pennsylvania. 2 hours later, police would trace Dean's cell phone 2 miles down the road to this farmland and quickly discovered Thomas Mayo's car inside a shed. Beside it, what at that time was an abandoned house on the edge of 90 acres of land owned by Antonio and Sandra DiNardo, owners of a cement and construction company. Inside the car was Thomas's insulin medication, something the diabetic boy could not go without for long. That night, another teenager would contact police stating that he had met with the son of the DiNardos, who had offered to sell him a 1996 Nissan Maxima, meeting near the Neshiminy Mall just north of Philadelphia, where he tried to sell the car for $500. As they began searching his parents' Solebury property, police would arrest Cosmo DiNardo at his parents' main home on a firearms charge from February that had been dismissed in May. But they were able to levy that into the arrest, with Cosmo's bail being set at $1 million. As family and friends gathered around the street outside the thickly wooded DiNardo farm property, police would dig into the troubled history of 20-year-old Cosmo DiNardo. The DiNardo family began their real estate empire in the 1970s, when Cosmo's grandfather, Cosmo Sr., began purchasing up residential and commercial properties around Philadelphia and Bucks County. His son, Antonio, would join his father in 1989 and eventually take over the business, purchasing the Metro Ready Mix and Supply Company in 1998 and Bella Trucking in 2004. It was the following year that the first parcel of this land outside of New Hope would be purchased. In 1997, Antonio and Sandra DiNardo would give birth to their first child, Cosmo DiNardo. As he grew up, Pierce stated he was a normal boy who just got into minor trouble, with his only police interaction being a 2011 incident where he was driving an ATV on the street. In middle school, he was captain of the football team and would throw pool parties at his parents' house, which were a big hit in the cul-de-sac that had been completely constructed and sold by the DiNardos. Cosmo would attend Holy Ghost Preparatory School, graduating in 2015. This year, he would be sworn into the Bensalem Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board as one of the members personally chosen by the mayor. He loved shoes, paying friends or the unhoused to stand in line for new sneaker releases that he would then sell online. Cosmo would attend Arcadia University in nearby Glenside, but only enrolled for 1 semester, his college profile stating he was interested in pursuing biology and studying abroad in Europe. But there was also a dark side to Cosmo DiNardo. At age 15, he would punch 2 strangers in the mall when they talked to his then-girlfriend. He claimed to have killed 2 people in Philadelphia at the same time and would aggressively pressure women for sex. In May 2017, Cosmo would have an ATV accident on the farmland property, where he was left pinned with a broken leg underneath the vehicle for hours. Some sources claim he also suffered a severe head injury, either in this crash or as a result of a fight. But what is certain is that roughly 1 month later, everyone agreed Cosmo was different. He stopped eating his mother's food, claiming she was trying to poison him, and he would get physically aggressive with his father. Doctors would put him on antidepressants, and the once physically fit middle school football captain began to gain weight. Over the next 2 months, police would respond a total of 23 times to the DiNardo home, finally culminating on July 12, 2016, when Cosmo would bite and punch his mother for trying to get him to commit himself to a hospital, and he would be involuntarily committed instead. Cosmo would tell his doctors that his mother was a Russian spy, and that he believed the cast for his broken leg was bugged, leading to a diagnosis of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Over the next 5 months, he would be readmitted 2 more times, getting into altercations with the staff every single instant. Most fights were with his father, who was openly having extramarital affairs, with Cosmo one time smashing the woman's car with a baseball bat and his father throwing a brick at his head. In another instance, Cosmo had hunted his father on the farm property with his AR-15 rifle before deciding to not pull the trigger. On October 23rd that year, he would return to Holy Ghost to attend the school's open house, but after being loud and disorderly, was escorted off the property and banned from returning. The following month, Cosmo would return to Arcadia University on the pretext of re-enrolling. But again, after several students and staff members reported he was making them feel uncomfortable, he would be banned from returning here as well, eventually taking just a single credit class at the Bucks County Community College in January 2017. On February 9th that year, a neighbor would call police stating that Cosmo was walking down the street in their cul-de-sac firing a shotgun into the air. Police would respond and find the gun in the boy's car, who was not allowed to possess a firearm due to his involuntary commitment to the hospital. This was just one of 17 interactions with police he would have since that first release. In May, a lawsuit against Cosmo would be filed for an incident that had occurred just 2 months prior, where he rear-ended a man in his vehicle, leaving him with severe injuries. As the spring approached, most of Cosmo's friends had begun to shy away from him, with his social media posts wavering between a lonely man looking for company to a violent loner who would brag about selling drugs and guns. As news of the missing boys spread in July, group chats that Cosmo and those boys were in would post looking for the missing boys. Someone even asking Cosmo if he was concerned his friend Dean had vanished. Cosmo would play it off, stating, quote, "He's a pill-popping junkie who had 2 DUIs. He probably just jumped probation." On Monday, July 10th, police would arrest Cosmo at his parents' main house on the premise of the February gun charge. But in reality, they considered him a person of interest in the missing Bucks County 4. His father would post the 10% of his $1 million bail, and Cosmo returned home. But only 1 day later, on Wednesday the 12th, police would yet again arrest him at the DiNardo home. This time on charges of stealing and trying to sell Mark Sturgis's vehicle, with a new bail set at $5 million.
Police have continued to elevate DiNardo's alleged criminal role in the disappearances of Jimmy Patrick, Dean Finacciaro, Tom Mayo, and Mark Sturgis. Jimmy Patrick was last seen 1 week ago.
I feel that we bought ourselves a little bit of time in charging Mr. DiNardo with the stolen car case today and getting that $5 million bail.
The last bail release, DiNardo's family was able to pay 10% of $1 million on a separate case. That option was taken off the table this time around, the judge setting that hefty $5 million cash bail. She says it is the highest bail that she has ever set.
His parents never had a chance to post the money, as that same night, the mystery of what happened to the boys would be solved, and Cosmo DiNardo would never again be a free man.
A break in the case of the 4 missing young men in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But unfortunately, this is the type of break that their families have been fearing.
Good evening. I'm Matt Weintraub, Bucks County District Attorney. I'm here to make an announcement about a significant development in the investigation that you've all been following so patiently, so diligently. We have found human remains in an approximately 12.5-foot deep common grave that we have painstakingly dug with a lot of care so as not to damage any potential evidence. And I'm very, very sad to say that we can now identify Dean Finocchiaro, 19 years old, of Middletown, as one of the people that was found buried in that grave. There are additional human remains inside that grave. So this painstaking process will go on. We're not done yet.
After cadaver dogs had hinted strongly to the presence of remains, this area, about 400 feet behind the DiNardo farmhouse, where debris had been piled, was excavated to reveal a metal tank that had been buried about 12.5 feet deep. Inside were the remains of 3 bodies, though at that time, only Dean Finocchiaro could be successfully identified. When police questioned Cosmo, initially he claimed that he had picked up Dean that night, but kicked him out of the car when he learned Dean was going to a farmhouse for a, quote, big coke deal. He stated he left him along the side of the road and went fishing for the rest of the day. But once confronted that the bodies had been found on his parents' farm, the entire shocking story came out as the boy openly and nonchalantly discussed his murder spree. Around 6 p.m. July 5th, Cosmo would pick up Jimmy Patrick from his grandparents' house on Burgundy Lane in Newtown, and they made the roughly 23-minute drive up to the DiNardo's Solebury Township farm, where they had agreed to exchange 4 pounds of marijuana for $8,000. But when they arrived, Jimmy confessed he only had $800. Jimmy had been 1 grade below Cosmo in high school, and was one of the people that Cosmo would pay to stand in line for new sneaker releases and then sell online, and allegedly later graduated to selling marijuana like Cosmo.
You were selling drugs, right? I was middlemaning deals with drugs. This particular deal, I was not making any money. I was just, getting him a good price on a large quantity of marijuana. So we get there, let me see the money. So I gotta count the money. There's $800 there. So I'm like, dude, if you don't have the money, this is horrible. This is not good for me.
Instead of the drugs, Cosmo stated he would sell him a shotgun for the $800, so they went out to the woods where he let Jimmy test the gun. In his confession, Cosmo stated he saw a pistol in Jimmy's backpack and felt certain that Jimmy was planning on killing him. So he used a .22 caliber rifle to shoot Patrick twice in the back of the head.
I said, well, I could sell you a gun. We get out of the truck, I hand him a shotgun, he goes to shoot it, and I shoot him.
He would then use the backhoe to dig a roughly 6-foot deep hole and bury the boy in the hilled back area of the DiNardo property.
Alright, so after you shoot him, I go get the backhoe, dig the hole, set a prayer, turn him in the hole.
On July 7th, 2 days after the murder, Cosmo would pick up his second cousin, Sean Kratz, as he was on his way to pick up another boy for a drug deal at the farm. Born less than a month after Cosmo, Sean lived in this home on McGee Avenue in the northeast Philadelphia area, working as a dishwasher at the nearby Philadelphia Protestant nursing home. But like his cousin, Sean had a bad side. The previous summer, he would be arrested when he was caught on surveillance cameras stealing lawn care equipment from the garage of one of his girlfriend's neighbors. In fact, most residents along the 600 block of Benner Street, just a 20-minute walk from the Kratz home, knew of the boy, who other times would be caught trying to steal air conditioner units, selling stolen merchandise, and was even suspected of stealing his now ex-girlfriend's mom's dog. His mother also had him involuntarily committed in September 2016 when he pulled a gun and threatened his younger brother. The two boys' mothers had actually set them to hang out the previous year after both had lost all other friends due to their issues, and they hoped the pair would keep each other out of trouble. Before they arrived to pick up Dean Finocchiaro, they had agreed they would rob him when they got out into the woods, and Cosmo handed Sean his mother's .357 Smith & Wesson handgun.
He kept talking about selling weed and drug deals and guns. Like this mobster type of guy. And this is my cousin. He talked about, he had to sell, he was gonna sell marijuana. Then it came into, he could rob him and get away with it. He could rob him where he could just kill him. I don't know what he was pissed off all about, but he has issues. The kid turned into a monster on his friends that he was supposed to hang out with, smoke weed with, sell weed to, and becomes an animal.
Cosmo would state that Dean was like a cousin to him, and the pair had long been friends. But by this point, none of that mattered. On the property, Cosmo would drive all three on his ATV out into the woods. But after Sean did not go through with the robbery, they returned and entered into the barn.
Why are you going to meet up with Dean? A drug deal. This is pre-planned? Yeah. What's he to buy off you? Quarter pound of weed. I don't have a quarter pound. I have 2 ounces. So we picked Dean up. Now this was a robbery. Sean was going to, rob him in the woods by himself on a quad and kill him. He did. So we come back into the barn, we're looking at a Vespa ad, and when we stopped looking at that, Dean turns around to go walk out. When I went to turn, I just hear a bunch of shots go off. Dean goes down, face down, dead.
He was on his phone walking out, and Cosmo was to my left and, gave me like a signal, like this, like a hand gesture as a gun. Kind of, was hesitant. I pulled the gun out, I aimed it in the air, closed my eyes, and fired a shot.
I took the gun from Sean, and I shoot Dean, I think once or twice. I don't know how many times I shot.
Why, was he not dead?
No, he was dead.
Okay.
But I just to finish, I just shot him. I'm not lying, he was dead. Okay. His head was split the hell open. His brain, you probably found it, half his brain was in the barn.
Next, Cosmo would wrap the body in a blue tarp and try to drag it out of the barn. But when the tarp snagged on a nail, he would get the backhoe out and haul Dean over to a large metal tank that the family used to roast pigs in. It was then that Cosmo said he had 2 more kids coming for another drug deal. Neither one would leave alive. Cosmo had told Thomas Mayo to meet him in the parking lot behind the Peddlers Village Event Center, across the street from Peddlers Village, an old-fashioned open-air shopping district just 2 miles from the DiNardo farm. Thomas would meet his friend Mark Sturgis here, leaving that boy's car in this lot before they headed over into the Peddlers Village, where Cosmo would eventually find them, and directed Tom to follow him the roughly 2 miles back to the abandoned house around the corner from the DiNardo farm, one of the 2 parcels the family had purchased to expand their own property. Once here, all the boys would pile into Cosmo's truck and head back to the farmland, where unbeknownst to Tom and Mark, Sean was waiting. As they parked and got out of the truck, Cosmo would fire the .357 into Tom's back.
He said something's not right. So, when they turn their backs on me, I shoot Tom in the back, drop him. Mark's like, what the? He was such a big kid, I loaded the gun on him.
Now out of ammunition, Tom Mayo was still alive and screaming that he could not feel his legs. Cosmo would use the backhoe to run over the boy and crush him to death, before using it to drive both bodies and dump them into the metal tank.
So, he's paralyzed. He goes, I can't feel my legs, I can't feel my legs. I went and grabbed the machine, because he's screaming now. I mean, I'm surprised the neighbors didn't hear us.
Why are you shooting him again?
I'm out of bullets.
He's screaming, going crazy. Sean's like, got his head in his hands. I grab the backhoe. He sees that coming, just shuts the fuck up, and I just run him over.
Antonio DiNardo would testify that his son phoned him 3 times that night, asking him to come alone to the property. But when he learned Antonio was with his mistress, phoned back again saying don't come. Instead, the boys dumped 5 gallons of gasoline into the metal tank, lit the match, and then left to get Philly cheesesteaks. Sean would sleep over at the DiNardo home. The following morning, the pair washing down the truck before heading back to the Kratz house, where they stored the gun and met with Sean's sister, who had just had a baby. Next, Cosmo stopped to get a haircut, where they tossed their 4 victims' ID cards into the sewer, and then they went to a car wash outside of the Philadelphia Mills Mall, when Cosmo's mother phoned him frantically that word was spreading Dean was missing, and Cosmo was the last person to see him. The boys would drive back to the farm, where they found that gasoline alone is not hot enough to cremate a body, and so they would use the backhoe to dig a 12.5-foot deep hole and bury the tank with bodies inside. While the tank was recovered, attempts to locate Jimmy Patrick were unsuccessful, and in return for his confession and showing where the second burial site was, Cosmo would be spared the death penalty.
You guys are digging right here. Yep. There's 3 bodies there. Okay. The 4th one is right there.
About a half-mile from the other bodies, up into the hilled remote woods, police would find his buried corpse. The last of the 4 had been found.
Family and friends said a final farewell to Dean Finocchiaro this afternoon in Levittown. The 19-year-old was one of the 4 young men brutally murdered and buried in Bucks County earlier this month.
The line was dozens deep before the doors to the funeral home opened at noon. Today, family and friends gathered in Levittown to pay their final respects.
Hundreds would attend each of the 4's funerals, with friends and relatives all sharing their fondest memories of the boys.
Cosmo, you admitted to killing 4 people. Why'd you do it? What do you have to say to these families, Cosmo? Anything to say? Even a sympathy? Even you're sorry?
I'm sorry.
On May 16, 2008, Cosmo DiNardo would plead guilty to all 4 murders and receive 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. That same day, Sean Kratz would reject a plea deal that would have seen him eligible for parole after 59 years. And on November 15, 2019, he would be convicted for Dean's murder, as well as participating in Tom Mayo and Mark Sturgis's murders, receiving a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Breaking right now, guilty verdicts from a Bucks County jury tasked with deciding the case against Sean Kratz.
It took nearly 18 hours of deliberations, but those jurors came to their decision this afternoon. 22-year-old Sean Kratz of Philadelphia found guilty of first and second-degree murder in the death of Dean Finocchiaro. Additionally, jurors found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter in the deaths of Thomas Mayo and Mark Sturgis. Kratz's conviction qualifies him for the death penalty. Again, the families came together to make the decision. Persuaded by Finocchiaro's family, they do not pursue the death penalty.
Save yourself, because he'll bury you. Just like he did to those 4 boys. You can't bring them back, but you can give them justice. I don't know why we're related to him. It's okay. We're not related now.
In 2023, a settlement between the 4 victims' families and the DiNardos was reached, after the families filed a lawsuit that Cosmo's parents should have prevented his access to firearms after his institutionalization.
Well, a lawsuit has been filed against the parents of Cosmo DiNardo, one of the men charged in the Bucks County killings of 4 people last July. The family of one of DiNardo's alleged victims, Mark Sturgis, filed the suit.
The DiNardo family, in turn, had filed a lawsuit against the hospital and Cosmo's doctors, placing blame on them and seeking compensation for Cosmo's, quote, pain and distress of being incarcerated and the knowledge he killed 4 people. As Pennsylvania has their own Son of Sam law, preventing criminals from profiting from their crimes, this lawsuit was dismissed.
I don't know why I did this shit, man. Threw my life away for nothing.
It is possible we may never know the real reason for this massacre. The only hints Cosmo could give to police were that he felt cheated during the deals or in danger, while Sean stated he was afraid of what Cosmo would do to him if he did not help.
He made it out, like, you say anything, I will hurt your brother. And I just, after knowing, what he's capable of, scared, not only for myself, for others.
Cosmo's psychiatrist, who had an appointment with him literally in between the murder spree, wrote that Cosmo's bipolar disorder was in full remission, and that in that very meeting, they had agreed to completely wean Cosmo off of medications. The doctor had no idea that while out in the waiting room, Cosmo had been researching about the Soup Maker Cartel, a Mexican criminal syndicate who disposed of bodies by dissolving them in acid. Other reports stated that the family was dedicated to helping their son, but were overwhelmed. In their first interview with the press in 2020, Sandra DiNardo would tell a story that there was a legend in the neighborhood that they built the cul-de-sac on a former Native American burial ground. She would also state that she believed Cosmo had fallen under a demonic presence, even claiming she had her priest try to bless their house, and he told her something evil was inside the basement fireplace. The Catholic Archdiocese would only verify that the priest had a relationship with the family, but declined to go any further into the matter. Since then, the family has chosen to stay out of the press. In 2024, their cement company would be fined $165,000 by the Environmental Protection Agency for stormwater pollution. Whether demonic possession, a damaged frontal lobe, or mental illness, the dark descent of Cosmo DiNardo is a frightening one. In less than a year, a boy known for helping neighbors and serving on an anti-drug board became a violent psychotic and drug dealer. Blame is easy to pass around, but for those who knew the Bucks County Four, while they may no longer be missing, their absence from the lives of family and friends is something that will never subside.